The Appalachian Mountains of Virginia have long been the home of rebels, fiercely independent and capable people. Now you may be imagining country accents or even outstanding bluegrass music. But know this, these people are poets.
It makes me feel whole. It makes me feel connected to the past and connected to the future. It makes me timeless.
They're keen observers of the world around them and have a sense of ethics that runs deep. And right now, they're fighting a real life and death revolution. And if they lose, we all lose. One of these warriors has been in the battle for over 40 years, and this is his story. It's the story of a life dedicated to a most worthy cause, and a partnership over 5,000 years old.
Often the way I live my life is considered backward or old-fashioned, all sorts of things that put it in the past. And I've dealt with that criticism most of my adult life. And the way I've dealt with it is knowing that the culture that I believe in and that I practice is valid as a proven historical method of meeting human needs. We have to keep these truly renewable and truly sustainable practices as an instrument that remains in the toolbox of human survival into the future.
It wasn't until I met Jason that I understood about Appalachia. We need more people that are willing to put the time, energy, and effort into a place, because nothing happens in a lifetime. It's only over the course of many generations that we see changes. And so if we're not able to put our lifetime into a place and into projects and to trying to better our surroundings a little bit more and ourselves in the process, then it all seems, it doesn't seem worth it.
I think Jason is a very stubborn guy. He has gotten this great idea of what a sustainable farm community could be, and he has more than done his part in conveying that to the general public. The mark of greatness sometimes is that single-focused dedication to a particular goal or type of life that we need, because that's where all that knowledge comes from.
You know, Jason has devoted his life to passing on this tradition, and not for the sake of being traditional, for the sake of going into the future as the best way to do it. And that's the difference. People don't seem to understand. We're not throwing it back to the past. Let's use the best technology of the past to go into the future.
My dad has been able to stay true and stay strong behind his dream, behind the environmental practices, behind the horse logging, behind his ideals. And I mean, it's changed and evolved over the years, and I'm proud of him for that too. And demonstrate and bring people in just literally out of the goodness of his heart, just to share the culture. Because that takes a lot of determination to keep on and keep on. I would get worn out of trying to teach something to people that a lot of people just simply don't want to learn. And so I'm really proud of him for always sticking strong with that.
I was once on the cover of the Mother Earth News, and a USDA expert said that it was fine that I was doing that, but that it was an anachronism. And I didn't know exactly what that meant for a while. And so I looked it up. It was somebody that was out of time with the present. And it came to me almost as an epiphany one day sitting in the woods that he was right. I was out of time with the present, and it was because I'm in the future.
And that is why, despite the odds, a skeptical society, and a world racing to complete its own destruction, this warrior still has hope for a better, brighter future.
Anytime you choose to live a life that is different than what mainstream is providing as a general opportunity, it is going to be harder. The reason the horses are so important to me is that when I use my scientific information and my experiential knowledge of what's going on in the forest, I see that I should be imitating nature and going in and taking the trees that are not doing well we go in and do single tree selection on a worst first basis.
That means he never takes the biggest, most valuable trees. Those remain for the health of the forest. Only after a thorough inspection proves a tree is in a state of decline is it chosen for harvest.
And then the horses present themselves as the most capable, powerful way for us to remove those trees from that living interconnected ecosystem with minimum impact on the system itself.
You may be asking, how can horses possibly be better than powerful, heavy machinery? Good question, friend.
The horses are a power source that allow for surgical manipulation of an intense ecosystem. And that's exactly what the forest is. The day will come, very rapidly, where the forest is seen to be more valuable for the ecological services that it's providing than the wood. Or as my friend Wendell says, when you reduce the forest to logs alone, you reduce the overall productive capacity of the forest. I spent all of my active duty in England, and I lived just outside of London. So on the weekends, since it was a shore duty situation, I had a lot of liberty. So I would go traveling on my motorcycle, and one day I was traveling out across the English countryside, and I got lost, and I pulled off on a little back road, turn around and find my way back, and as I pulled off, I looked down this lane, and there came a horse walking up that lane with a little boy leading it. I was just captivated by this beautiful scene, and so I cut my motorcycle off and sat there and got off, and the young guy came up to the top of the hill, and he turned and went through a little gate right there, and I hollered to him. I said, "Oi!" He immediately responded back, "What do you want, Yank?" And I said, "I would like to see your horse. I've never seen a horse like that." And so I go over and I look, and there stands this horse. It's completely solid red. And I said, "What kind of horse is that?" And he said, "Oh, she's a Suffolk Punch." And I said, "Suffolk Punch? I never saw one of those. I just thought that was great, and wonderful that I'd seen something I'd never seen before." And I got back on my bike and drove on. I never thought about that much again until some 10, 12 years later, I'm back home, and service is over, and I'm making this decision to go back to the land and go farm. And I had gotten me some horses, and through some strange twist of fate, none of my doing, I had come to own imported English horses. And I'm at my mother's one Christmas, and she had bought me a coffee table book, which was an album of horses. There is a photograph of a horse that looks exactly like that one I saw in '69 out in England, and it had the man's name and address down on the bottom of the page of who owned the horse. I wrote him and asked him if that horse that it looked just like the first horse that I'd ever saw, first Suffolk horse that I'd ever seen. And he wrote me back and said, "Well, Mr. Rutledge, it's good to hear from you that indeed that horse, Molten Princess III, was exactly the same horse that my hired man's son told me the American sailor had stopped to see." And of course, this is years later, and the horse is dead by now. And he said, "Well, I also happen to be a member of the American Suffolk Horse Group, and I joined because I have exported some horses to America." And he said, "I happen to notice that in the newsletter that you actually own 3 English Suffolk horses now, and one of them is a mare named Wynyard's Crocus." And he said, "I didn't know whether you realized it or not, but that mare you own, Wynyard's Crocus, is a daughter of Molten Princess III, the first Suffolk horse I ever saw in my life." And I had nothing to do with any of this happening in any way. So at that point, when I had that reckoning, I got the little hair on the back of my neck feeling of wow, I'm supposed to have these horses. I still, to this day, have 7 generations away from that original first mare that I saw in England. And I'm very happy to have that sort of continuity that this has been a part of my life more than I even realized for a long time. And I'm very happy for that. It makes me feel whole. It makes me feel connected to the past and connected to the future. It makes me timeless. If there is immortality, it's available through belief in culture and passing on that life knowledge to the next lives that are going to be lived in the world. This is Int, the direct female line from the first Suffolk I ever saw. 70, 71, I forget which year. My first year in England. She's called Int because the Ints are the talking, walking trees in Lord of the Rings that saved humanity. They actually broke a dam on a big lake that flooded the zombies that were about to kill the last humans alive. They had them all corralled in a canyon. They were about to kill them all. And here came the big, huge, walking, talking trees and ruptured the dam and flooded the zombies and saved humanity. This is the Int. Well, that was my perception of it. This is thousands of years of culture that has evolved. This is the best effort of humans in an animal husbandry sense to develop the most efficient and willing to serve horse. And I just think that it is irresponsible, not prudent, not wise at all to just dismiss and throw away that hundreds of years of cultural development just because of the presence of cheap, intensive energy in the form of oil for the last 75 years. We shouldn't throw away what got us to the point where the oil began. We should at least be wise enough to keep that as an instrument in the toolbox for the human future. We should not dismiss what has been proven. As an occupation, on a deaths per capita basis, logging is the second most dangerous work in the world. And it's because it is an incredibly violent experience to harvest these huge biological organisms that are a tree. Each one weighs tons, and every time you cut it down, there's a massive explosion of taking that tree to the ground.
Felling a tree is always dangerous, and a woodsman needs experience to understand the effects of uneven terrain, the wind, and the current balance of the tree to drop it safely while avoiding damage to the surrounding trees.
This uprooted tree is uprooted and fell and hung in that tree. And that tree will have to be harvested in order to harvest this tree, which both trees have done all they're going to be able to do. I'm looking to see which side the crown is hung on, know which way to fall that tree in order to let this tree fall and not be standing under it when it does it. Because if it starts too quick, then that tree's going to slide this way down there. And if it goes too slow, then it'll just crumble and splinter. You got to keep enough fiber in that tree to make it fall. As that tree pushes it, then they separate. We want it to do this instead of this, because if it just collapses, then there's going to be an explosion. Something about like that.
On top of the exponential opportunity for injury, we add an animal power source. When you add the unknown of the animal, it requires you to be far more present. It is a be here now constancy. It really does make you pay attention to life around you. They present unknown variables of danger. because they are so huge. And when they move, you need to be anticipating and reacting to everything that's going to happen, especially when you have them hooked to a 5,000-pound log. The attachments to the logs, that every time you're handling that, you're presenting a chance to mash your finger off. Of course, the log itself could very easily roll on someone and break limbs or crush them. The horses themselves, if they became very frightened and ran away, there would be no stopping them. So it really does present a multitude of dangers that are only addressed by a holistic skill set that involves a different way of living in the company of horses.
The Suffolk Punch draft horse originates in Suffolk, England. Once a common and desired power source on British farms, the Suffolk Punch species is now endangered. Today, Jason's Windridge Suffolk Farm is one of the few places this almost perfect workhorse can be found. The reason the Suffolk Punch is such a great workmate is that it's been bred for over 500 years to have strength, efficiency of movement, and a willing-to-please disposition.
They're the only breed that's been bred expressly for farm work. They were never used for knights in armor. They were never used for military purposes. One of the most endearing characteristics of the Suffolk is their quality of heart. They will try as hard as they can for you, over and over, just for the asking. They're kind. They're responsive to a human presence, and they're the most gentle and docile of all the draft horses I've ever known. And I think that's because of their agrarian development. I'm often asked, why do you choose Suffolk horses? Well, it's basically laziness, and it's because I understand that they're the easiest horses to work with. And if you're going to do this hard work, why not at least work with an animal that is willing and easy to get along with?
I'm curious about that. What is that? That's not a feed bucket. It's a hat.
For decades, Jason has actively promoted restorative forestry and the benefits of horsepower. As both his message and methods spread, more people make their way to Jason's farm to learn about the benefits of horsepower.
My name is Rachel Cole. I'm a senior instructor in the agricultural technology program at Virginia Tech, and I have my horse management class here. They are second-year students in the only associate's degree program at Virginia Tech, and so we have a running tradition where we come to Jason's farm for a field trip every year so that they can learn about the Suffolk Punch breed and the work that he does with them. Jason has a lifetime of knowledge about restorative forestry and draft horses in general. And so I wanted my students to see a type of management and a type of lifestyle that they probably won't be able to see in a different place.
I think that the only option we have to be sustainable is to be restorative. That's what it's about. It's going into the forest, identifying the trees that aren't doing well, and falling them in ways that protect what I'm choosing to leave, and extracting them from the forest with the very least amount of damage. That's restorative.
Restorative forestry is important for my students to understand because in a day and age when we talk about typical sort of commercial production agriculture, I want them to understand that forestry in general is, and the land that they're going to be part of is going to be very important, and for them to understand that we want to be able for future generations to continue this tradition, right? And in order to do that, we have to take care of our land.
The carbon sequestration. There's nothing on the surface of the land that will take carbon out of the atmosphere and store it as quick or as thoroughly as the forest.
The class is called horse management, and so we cover all aspects of managing equine operations, working with horses in general, and part of that, of course, is knowing how to work with horses. And I don't know very many true horsemen. In my life, I've met a lot of horse people, but not true horsemen, and Jason is a true horseman.
You want to go forward in your life and have some credence to climate change and carbon in the atmosphere, this is the way of reducing carbon. Because every time we go out here and pull a log out, every loaded step that horse takes doing something for me is less carbon in the atmosphere. Because we're not having to run an internal combustion engine to meet our needs.
So I do see horses as a valid means of energy and of use in the future. There are different areas and different aspects of agriculture that could easily use horsepower. Bringing it back into the forefront is really important for our students to understand and for the public to understand their use.
This is not leather. It only has leather where it needs a memory, and it has nylon where it needs strength.
These horses have a purpose, and to me, that's what draws me to them. Suffolk Punches in general, I love draft horses in general because of their attitude. Suffolk Punches have an even deeper calm about them. The quality of the Suffolk Punch breed is just outstanding. Jason as a resource is unmatched. Personally, I keep up with him because of his depth of knowledge on the breed itself. There are a lot of people that work with horses and have done a lot with them, but a true horseman has a connection. And you can see that when he's working with his horses. Even just standing next to them, they'll turn and look at him and they know that that's a safe person, a person that they want to be with. In a world where there is so much competition, Jason is so open and giving with his time and his knowledge. I think the traditional ways are going to be very beneficial even in the future as long as we can keep some people interested in them. I think that's what Jason does a really good job of is showing their benefit, not just, well, I can do this as a side job. This is what he's done with his life, and it shows these students and the people that he works with and shares his time with that it is possible to make a living. You can make a living doing this. When so many of these young people hear constantly, you're not going to make it in farming, you're not going to be able to do this. They need encouragement, and to know that this can be part of it is very, very important.
My name's Ben Burgess, and I'm a certified biological woodsman through the Healing Harvest Forest Foundation. I don't use the horses because of the traditional aspect of it, because my grandparents did it. I use them because they're the best. They're the most superior technique we've got to not damage the woods. And that's all. I mean, if they were something else, I'd switch to something else, but I don't know of anything. I mean, what can you do that you can tie the lines up and voice command and send them out of the woods? You know, there's no machine that's got a remote control. I don't see anytime soon that the horses will be replaced with any type of machinery that will do a better job. No, they're not as fast, but when you add up all the positive ecological benefits that the horses have, it's not even a comparison. You know, and the woods, you can't tell we've even been here. Depending on the harvest, you know, within 2 weeks, sometimes you can't see where we've even been other than the stumps and the tops. Within 2 years, there's no sign at all. Once you clear cut something, you've changed the entire ecosystem. You know, you've changed the whole structure of that ground. It'll never be the same. I would say it's untelling how many thousands of species that we've lost of different type of things. Insects, fungus, you know, because it's all interconnected. And when you clear cut it, you've destroyed all of that interconnectivity of the land. And you know, 300 or 400 years, it's not going to come back and be the same.
35 years ago, Jason realized that those taking from the forest rarely made an effort to restore these critical environments, and that had to change. Anyone working in the forest must ensure its ability to thrive. So Jason formed an organization to create responsible woodsmen.
The development of everything that Healing Harvest Forest Foundation is doing has been somewhat of a creational, but also a reactionary thing. If you allow industry to define how we are doing things and how we see things, then nothing will change. So I was compelled to redefine what we were doing to include true improvement of the natural world. And that's how I came up with language that defines our approach to be unique and different and separate from conventional language. When a conventional forester would say all horse loggers are bad because they're slick talking high graders, my concept was, oh no, that's not necessarily true, because we can be worst first harvesters. So that's when I developed that phrase of worst first single tree selection, was to counter the concept of high grading, which is taking the best and leaving the rest. It's very important that the ethic of restoration, the ethic of improvement, the ethic of being a steward, of leaving it better than you found it, is imparted as part of the training and education of these woodsmen. Most loggers just go in and convert the forest into law. So that led me to define the difference between a logger and a woodsman. A logger is someone who converts the forest to the commodity of a log for a fee. A woodsman is someone who goes into the woods and addresses their needs in such a way that guarantees that they can always come back again. You marry the ecosystem around you. You become connected to the future of the conditions around you, and that ends up being a source of your dignity.
Among the woodsmen that live this life, one man serves as a constant watermark for efficiency, volume, and power.
We're going to a place that's so steep and the logs are so big that we will put a third horse out front and use what's called a unicorn hitch, where the front horse is actually helping the back two pull these logs up very steep mountains, because that's the only way the logs can come out is uphill. And when you get in that situation, you have to have more horsepower in order to get something done without tiring the horses so much. Third horse is Ricky Bobby.
Good. It's actually a good position. We can get the horse to turn around nice. Good job, son. It's so rocky that I couldn't see cutting a road in here. And so that means you have to deal with the terrain. A track machine, steel tracks, would have a very hard time in here. The horses allow us to go with what's here. We can pick our way and find these little benches in the terrain. They do a good job pulling uphill because they apply themselves more of a vertical fashion to the ground as in a linear fashion.
This is as hard as it gets, and the reasons are multiple. First of all, this is what we call compound angle. He's coming down the hill, but he's coming across the hill. And then the difficulty is multiplied by the fact that we have all of these slick rocks sticking out all over the place, and the horses can't gain a purchase. They can't hold their ground if they step on these slick rocks. Plus, these rocks are sharp and dangerous.
You see right here is the edge.
Yes,
every time that they chip that off, it's a brand new, it's like a razor.
This is logging in Appalachia, and it's probably as tough as it gets. Compounded again by all of these difficulties of angles and steepness and rocks. These are heavy logs. This is not softwood it's not Western fir here. So it takes a tremendous amount of power, but it has to be a controlled power.
And with these heavy logs and that steep incline, precision control is what separates horse from industrial logging equipment. Plus, a horse has caution, judgment, balance, and excellent traction to go along with all that natural horsepower.
Go ahead and do your undercut and get it ready to cut.
That big boy is Alabama. He's still learning, but brings a lot of muscle. To his right is reliable, savvy vet Cedar. And for some extra pulling power, Ricky Bobby will be at the point position of what's called a unicorn hitch.
In our area, the local community enjoys a bounty of natural resources. And to me, it's all connected to the forest. If you go to other parts of the world, you can see that we have such a bounty of clean air, water. The forest is part of the Appalachian culture. It's how the culture evolved. It was in tandem with the forest. What I hope to show, there's a better way to take care of the forest. We've got to protect it. We've got to keep it intact for future generations. There's just a multitude of benefits. And to me, if it's just even for the mere fact that if you want to come up here and sit for a while and have some peace, it's here. Get on down here, son, get ready to cut this log. I don't want these horses to have to stand here a long time.
The horses know it's go time as they wait for the two-word command to pull. Come up.
All right, come up, come up.
A good horseman never tests the limits of his partner's pulling power.
All right, son. Come up.
The horses trust the woodsman to decide how much they can safely pull. The woodsman must honor that trust by making sure the horse is always successful. Speed is not a consideration on these work sites. The extraordinary effort required for each pull is rewarded with rest. When the horses catch their breath, heart rate back to normal, they'll take their time going back down the hill. It's a good rule of thumb for everyone. Never rush the one who's working the hardest. Patience is key. They've earned that, plus a lot more.
If these horses weren't given this opportunity to prove their usefulness, they would just be food items for humans to eat them, or dog foods. And the fact that these horses are given a chance to prove that they're a superior way of doing things gives them a place in the future. It gives them a place as a part of this family and a place in the economy of this community, and it gives them a useful place in life.
You want 2 10s?
Yeah, cut 2 10s. They don't. Man, come here, see some horses pull. We gonna pull it. It goes down, and if the top rolls over, if it rolls over, it'll be going around the other way.
You won't put 3 to bring it up over the bank, or you gonna take it on up that way?
Hell yeah, we gonna put 3 on it.
You gonna take it on up your
On a team will have they'll bust their asses on that. That's a whole different deal.
Yeah.
No, that's why I got Rick out here. Part of my limiting factor now is just to have enough help to do it. Because I can't do this by myself, not with 3. And to find anybody anymore that can do it or wants to do it, that's a challenge in and of itself. Whoa. Whoop. Right. I wish you'd hurry up. I've got the Alabama missile right here. Let's let him launch it up through here. The fact that I'm getting him to stand at all, Jason, is a big deal. I'm telling you, man, that horse got to where he was at times under control. Whoop. Whoop. Oh. I got him, son. Now just do what you're doing. Whoa. Don't take it too long.
When you decide to work with an animal as part of your power, what you use to do things, the horses do become your partners. It becomes like most other things where you develop a relationship with them. You come to trust that they are going to do as you ask, to do the part that you need for them to do your work. And as they repeatedly give you that effort, they become so endeared to you. I'm not Amish. I don't want to go back in the past, but I want to refine the understanding of the horses as being a positive, useful part of the future for all of the beneficial reasons that they present to us, of operating on solar energy, repairing themselves, being able to operate on remote control, not compacting the ground, producing fertilizer as a byproduct and not pollution, not carbon monoxide. And then that greatest one of all is that they're renewable, that nobody's ever found a baby skidder in the woods one morning, but yet logging horses are often born on the job. The biggest problem is labor. The biggest criticism that anybody can make of my approach is that it's labor intensive. But my answer to that is thank you for the support of the job creational aspect of this kind of lifestyle. I'm not going to apologize for giving people something to do that's useful and not demeaning. We can do things differently and better. It's not going to be easier. Doing things the right way has never been easy.
Later that same day, Jason and Chad visit a significant site on another steep hillside. This is where Chad had his first logging job only 2 decades ago.
We are standing in a boundary of timber that I harvested in the spring of 1997. We came back in here back in the summer and walked it with Frank, and I did this before he was born. Now my son's gonna help me do it.
This forest is the epitome of health and vigor and diversity. And it's because of the way that that man aged it. It's the man aging of the forest. And that is exactly what that meant, because his management was intended to leave and create that kind of condition.
To me, it's just proof of what we're doing that works.
If this had been clear-cut 20 years ago when Chad was here, there would be nothing here for us to see. It would all just be little small tiny trees just starting to recover as an actual forest. But this was restorative forestry in the early forms, and he was careful about his harvesting. And you can see that there's no major damage to the residual, and this is proof that what we do works. And the size of these trees, you can also tell that this is proof that the horsepower is adequate to remove these stems. There is diversity. We can stand within a 100-foot circle and identify a dozen species. What do you see that you would cut this time? This tulip poplar right here with the triple crown in it. It needs to come.
Yeah.
The leaning black oak beside it. When you see the discontinuity of the bark's smooth here and rough there, and we got these weep on both sides, and it's holding leaves. This tree has almost died, and it doesn't know it.
People have become disconnected from nature, and they don't realize what's going on out here is directly affecting us. We are not separate. Our technology and our knowledge doesn't separate from that. You know, we can't just come and overpower this with technology or horsepower or big machinery. We have to work with nature. And I've always liked that aspect. I always looked at it as using the horses. We're using nature to help nature, to help protect nature. And it works together. There's a connection there. There's a reason for it.
You know, one of the most difficult things about this work is that we're selling our services for what we don't do. And what we don't do is we don't destroy the forest. But with the private forest landowners in the eastern U.S., when asked about the values they have for their forests, the number one concern is aesthetics, or the natural appearance of the forest. So we're the folks that can harvest their timber without destroying the natural appearance of the forest. So we are actually selling our services for what we don't do. And it's time to harvest it again, because the landowner has the ultimate compliment for a logger or for a forest manager is for the same landowner to ask you to come back and log the same ground again. Most loggers cut timber once in a lifetime. They don't ever go back to the same site. But here we are in a place where he cut just before his oldest son's born, and next time he comes back, his oldest son will cut this timber. It takes a special kind of vision to leave a cultural condition that is going to ripen and mature after you expire. But that's sort of the faith that you got to have if you believe in what you're doing is really being the right thing. It's the right thing for the long term, not for my immediate short gain.
One of the key principles of a strong local economy is honoring the word local. Whether it be farmers, artists, or horse loggers, When the product stays close by, so does the revenue and the opportunities.
Jason Tuller of Paper Bird Studio, right?
Paper Bird Studio and Design, yes.
And Design. What his specialty is wall easels?
So I built this thing for myself, and I mentioned it on my website. And I started getting contacted every day with people wanting the same thing. And so I resisted for about 2 years because I wasn't set up to do woodworking. And I finally started taking on a few of those jobs. They liked what they got, so I made 32 more, and I thought, oh, that'll take me for the next year, take care of any customer request, and I sold them in 4 weeks. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need to build a woodworking shop. And so I built this last year to get me the rest of the way there, and now I'm upgrading my tools.
This is our brand name, Draft Wood.
When I explained to them that the wood was selectively harvested using draft horsepower, boy, they ate that up. Of course, the low environmental impact factor is a big selling point, and a lot of customers really do recognize that.
It's because then they can feel like they're a part of the good work in the forest, too.
They understand that it's, buying from someone up here in Floyd, Virginia, using locally sourced wood is something special. Customers do. They know the difference between solid hardwood and lacquered plywood.
And they got a little story to tell about horses pulling it out of the woods.
That's right. This is the base unit of the product right here. This is the mast. These are 88-inch tall. That's for an order going out here next week. My standard product is 66 tall, and then the wall rail, this is just a piece of the profile here, and all this does is it mounts directly onto the wall, and then these things just kind of fit right over them, tension up with a little cam lever. So the idea is you can have as much of this wall rail as your studio can afford, and you can hang as many of these masts on it as you need. In my studio, mine's 20 foot wide, and I have 8 masts or something, so I can work on lots of really large paintings or on multiple paintings. So it's very modular. A lot of customers, order a bunch of sections of the wall rail. They can join them together during the installation. A lot of established painters are my clientele. I also sell a lot to art conservators and restoration professionals, appraisers and authenticators, these kind of auxiliary industries. And that's what this was developed, was for the first time I heard that someone actually put a framed Baroque era painting, kind of a priceless painting, on one of my easels. I was like, oh God, don't let it fall. I don't want to be the guy whose product causes a priceless painting to fall to the ground. And I also didn't want the paintings being damaged, the frames. And so I came up with this, and art conservators maybe make up around 20% of my clientele at this point. Sometimes I'll get wood that maybe was dead standing, or just sections that are low to the ground. We'll pick up minerals from the tap roots, and you'll get a little bit of staining in the wood. When that happens, I go ahead and I give it this treatment right here. This is a ebonized oak, and this is done by bathing the wood in basically in rust and vinegar. You dissolve iron in vinegar, and that creates a solution that as soon as it touches the tannins in the wood, it turns jet black. And so it's a great way of using every bit of the wood that comes out of the forest. The customers who purchase these certainly recognize that the wood, the way the wood is harvested, that draft horses are involved, that's a huge selling point, and they appreciate it. Yeah, no, this is beautiful. Thank you, Jason.
Not only does the lovely timber that these horses pull from a forest contribute to a local economy, but the horses themselves create opportunities for the skillful as well.
Hey, girl. I'm Rachel, I'm 18 years old, and I'm a farrier. You're all speckled.
She's very sensitive and responsive and move. You start on the front left, she'll work with you, I think. Just do what you do.
The basic trim, what you do is you take your hoof pick, just clear out all the dirt from the hoof, and then you go in with your hoof knife and you take down the bars, you take down the sole to where it's live sole, and that's going to be the map for the rest of your trim.
The white that's being exposed on the bottom of the horse's foot is the sole, and it's a thick bottom of the hoof that grows and builds up, and she's paring it off to be even and smooth like it's supposed to be, and that'll prepare her for a surface to put her nippers against as she goes right around and clips the hoof all off.
And it's also taking away all of the dead sole and exposing the live sole underneath. It's not, it's kind of like how when you're trimming your fingernails, you're taking back the long bit to get to a shorter bit, and it's not quite live in the sense that it has blood in that part, but right underneath it, there will be. Then you take your nippers and nip around the outside of the hoof wall. You're taking all the hoof wall down to where the sole tells you to.
The horse feels more comfortable when she is putting lift on the toe because there are no ligaments there to put that foot straight to the ground other than gravity and the continuation of its motion of stepping. So her technique is what makes the horse feel comfortable to give that foot up and be secure that it's okay to let her do whatever she wants with it.
From there, you can take your rasp and rasp that down nice and flat, roll the edges from the bottom, and then you pick the hoof up and put it on a hoof stand and rasp it from the top to give it a nice natural roll of what a Mustang would do by natural wear and tear, walking and running and on abrasive surfaces. That's what the whole trim is about, is taking the hoof back to what a natural, just abrased trim would be.
She was gentler on that left side and let you put it right against the ground. I saw that little technique you were using.
Yeah, that is the best.
I only thought old men did it that way.
No, young little skinny ladies that don't have much leg muscle do it too. This horse was really, really sweet. I was really happy to walk in and find a nice, gentle draft. Some drafts, you know, they like to lean on you. They're like, oh, you took one of my feet away. You're gonna have to be my next foot. Just a good, well-rounded, sweet animal.
It's very encouraging that you are choosing to do this and that you can do it so well. That's encouraging for someone who's invested their whole life into horses. To have young people come along, I'm real happy about that.
Thank you.
Very impressed that you have the finesse and the strength that it takes to do it.
The main thing with horses is always, it's never strength that wins out. It's always how you communicate.
Yeah, because they're so much stronger than us.
Now you may be wondering where a fella could get a team of horses if he were so inclined. As Jason began to promote horses as a power source, he knew early on that he would have to do more than talk about it. So he started training, not only the great Suffolk Punch horses, but the inspired people looking to embark on a similar journey.
What are you worried about, young horse? And it's Kelsey and Drew. And they're the new horses that belong to my friend Robbie. That's going to drive them for the first time today.
I'm a
farmer who has Blue Stem Farms in Amelia, Virginia. About 450 acres of it have been in varieties of cropland over the years, but we've been slowly moving away from hydrocarbon-intensive crops and moving towards managed intensive grazing, grass-finished ruminants, cattle and sheep. But even then, our input stayed high. And when I say high, I'm talking thousands of dollars of diesel fuel, you know, fertilizer bills. I'm talking NPK fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You know, we were spending tens of thousands of dollars a year. Too much money on tractors and equipment. You know, you have $250,000 in tractors and hay and equipment to support a herd of 200 mamas. It's easy, too, to think that technology, another fertilizer, another genetically modified plant is going to cure man's problems. But there's a bigotry that the human race carries, and that is if an ideology or if a way of accomplishing a thing is new, it by virtue of its newness must be better. And the more I looked at land and the more I looked at my soil and how the soil responded to petrochemicals and those nitrogenous-based fertilizers, started realizing, oh man, I had a bucket list, and on this bucket list, which is motivated by the desire to be a good steward, there we go, we got horses. I've been researching drafts for a while. Jason Rutledge had imported just a few years ago some new genetics from England. He also is a good horseman and a trainer of the wannabe teamster.
Head up, head up, head up. Don't ever stand directly over his head. Because when a prey horse becomes alarmed, the first thing they want to do is raise their head as high as possible to see all the boogers around them. So when a horse gets hit on the ground, never stand directly over it because they get alarmed, their head's coming up. And it'll hit you right in the face and knock you out.
If this vocation, this stewardship, this husbandry, if it gets to drive in you, you lose sight of the beauty. And there's a beauty to a well-kept farm or a farm that's loved. Yep. A hayfield looks a lot different when it's being tended by a horse than a 100-horsepower tractor. Now, the horses are obviously slower, and many would argue less efficient. A horse, the better it's trained and the better it's treated and the more willing partner you have for it, the more value the horse has. So the more I use it, the more valuable it is. The more I use my tractor, well, of course, we know it's depreciating. Ooh. Start from the front.
Yeah, you always hook from the front first. Step forward, baby. Stay right there on the head. And to stop them from moving forward, use your bits. And if you want to pull them forward, use your halters.
Okay.
All right, when I gather these lines up and touch me in the mouth, you just step off to the left and away we go. Ooh, babies. Ooh, babies.
I had a very technical education in undergrad to become an optometrist, and I had a, understandably, technocratic worldview. If technology would cure it, if a problem came up, mankind would come up with a solution. And after 20 years of watching that, marriage, family, kids being born, starting to farm, I realized, whoa, man, sometimes our problems came from our previous solution. You know, when the salesman comes to me and he wants to sell me tires for my tractor, and these tires have a new rubber hardness to keep your corn stalks from poking your tire. I'm thinking, whoa, why do I need that? I've been getting flat tires and it is the corn stalks. Why? Well, we put a BT gene in the corn, so now we got Bacillus thuringiensis in the corn. Of course, that keeps the corn borer, out of the corn, but it also keeps those little mice eats from just eating the corn and it decaying back into the ground. So these corn stalks sit there. Oh, well, we'll spray some nitrogen on it and increase the combustion. So I'm spraying nitrogen on corn stalks to get rid of the corn stalks. I'm buying a tire that's harder so that it's not flattened by the corn stalks. You know, I got a better idea. I'm gonna quit the GMOs and I'm gonna plant some grass and mix the legumes, the grasses, the forbs in a field, try to bring it back to life. Interestingly, it took me 3 years to get it from repeated exposure to GMOs and the herbicides to get the grass established.
I mean, you've got it. You just have to do the practice. You understand the principles. You've got nice contact with your hands. If I can get you to lower your voice and be a little more even toned so that they know that you're not mad at them. That the sweeter you talk to them, the sweeter they're going to be. And when you get up the crest of this hill, if they feel good, rest them again.
I'm working with an animal that's constantly feeling every inflection through those lines, my heartbeat, if my tension changes.
And this horse controls the speed. When you turn, the outside horse controls how fast it happens. The inside horse determines how tight the turn is. So see how she's getting quick? So you have to do that in a little give, take, give, take, give, take, give, take. There you go, way to gather and split. That was good instinct right there. That was what you have to do to get back to that nice Dutch you wanted.
Obviously, it's a big learning curve for me and for them.
Contact, command, and release.
Step up.
Control them from the first step. There you go. Gather and split again. Get that perfect tension. Try to keep this at the right angle. Forearms parallel. There you go. You can let out line and get your elbows perfect, just like you want it. When everything is going perfect, that's when you stop. Usually, when everything's going perfect, we all want to keep going. That's the opposite thinking for the horses because they need to be rewarded for their proper behavior. And the best reward is cessation of demand.
This is a little metaphor. We're having a group get together and I'm cutting up my broccoli and the gal next to me is cutting up her broccoli. And she said, oh my word, you have a worm in your broccoli? And I went, oh, well, you don't? She said, well, I don't want to eat a worm. I said, I don't either, but I don't want to eat broccoli that a worm doesn't want to eat. And I want to know that my grandchildren and great-grandchildren who will inherit this farm can walk barefooted, can eat asparagus right out of the ground, can go out and harvest spinach and not worry that it's been washed twice or 3 times.
Ooh, ooh. Good, good. Right. They will get better. They'll get so eventually they'll do whatever you want them to do with the subtlest of signals. And that's the whole idea, is for you to have the least amount of exchange for the maximum amount of response.
I'm excited for the farm to open up to them. My son's down there now working to make sure things are ready.
When the status quo states that you have to go into 6 figures of debt every year to be a farmer by purchasing expensive combines or tractors, using horses to do that same work is an act of defiance. Bucking the current system of a lifetime of debt is indeed a revolution.
I think the rebellious part and the revolution that my life presents as an option for the future is maybe best defined as in the access to control of the natural resources. Traditionally and currently, access to the decision-making process about which trees you cut and which trees you leave is made by who writes the check. And what makes it a revolution is that we have changed that decision-making from not being about who writes the check, but who has the best culture. We are now having it so that the access to the natural resources is based on who can do the best job of taking care of it, as opposed to who can give you the most money the quickest. That's a revolution. And I think that revolution is being fueled by private landowners' concern for what they see. You know, it's funny, you know, we want people to be deep about things, but frankly, most of us are much more influenced by what is immediately before our eyes. And a clear cut is one thing, and a nice naturally mixed age, mixed species forest is another. So if you can set up a situation where you reverse, it's called subverting the dominant paradigm. If you make it where you stop the access and the management of the forest and the natural world from being by those who have all the money to being by those who can do the best job, then that is a real revolution. And I think the revolution will continue to go along as we get more aware, particularly in this day's age when we have what's happening with our climate and our weather, to remind everybody regularly that something's not right. This is not the way it has always been. When you keep breaking heat records year after year after year, getting worse and worse and worse, I think some of the warnings are maybe been underplayed. It may be worse than we know, because it certainly is reflecting that it's worse than we know. So we're going to have to eventually deal with these things. And something I like about these young people that come along, that empower the revolution, because it's not the elders that are going to be changing the way things are done in the next 40 years. We're going to be inspired. We need to leave a path for different ways to go forward, and that's what my life is about. But there's a lot of responsibility for the older people to adopt changes now, revolt now, show that it's worth revolting because you care about the future, even if you're not going to be here to enjoy it. Probably 70% of the trees that I have chose to leave because they were healthy and beautiful and vigorous and growing, I will never harvest. It's like an old man planting an orchard. You know, he might not ever get the apples off the trees, but if he plants that orchard, somebody will.
Protecting our forested land requires a lifetime of commitment. Many lifetimes, in fact. As is often the case, those fighting to protect our most valuable resources live a life of sacrifice. Horse loggers, despite the value they bring to a community or even a region, are not wealthy people. Jason's retirement plan is to die with his boots on. So what keeps him going? Jason says it's the dignity dividend. He feels good doing important work in the forest, protecting a vital ecosystem. Jason and those like him will leave a blueprint to solve past problems with proven solutions, observed knowledge, and an example of relentless commitment. But one thing is for sure, despite any one person's efforts, no one does great things alone.
I'm fortunate in my life to have the company of good people, because that's how I want to be. I want to be generous, I want to be kind, I want to be supportive and encouraging. I want the best out of all the people around me. And that's the kind of guy that Swede McBroom is. He's one of those guys that makes people around him better because he cares for them. And that means the land, that means animals, that means the rare Suffolk Punch draft horse, that means arts that aren't commonly practiced or supported by him. And then he's got the practical side where the man can build the greatest furniture that you could ever imagine, homes and structures. So he's a real contribution to our community.
It's just an ideal place for me to be. And being a woodworker too, I mean, it's an ideal place to have these magnificent hardwood forests at your doorstep.
Imagine building your dream house with materials harvested from your own land. That is heaven on earth.
This is a unique design. It's all tongue and groove poplar for the sheathing and for the subfloor. The main woods for all the trim are oak, cherry, and walnut, and that all came within 5 miles of my workshops.
I'll have the trailer and the equipment and all that over there first of the week when the high pressure comes in.
Jason did a lot of the harvesting. He's trained a lot of people over the years, and they came and we had a 3-week logging party with, 4 or 5 teams going all the time. So it was amazing. I was able to really get a fine product at a very, very reasonable cost. And it was all local. It was all people working for that local economy.
Swede is very supportive of what I do, and he asked me once if I could do one thing for you to help you, what would it be? My comment was, we need a new stallion. The male horse ends up being half of everything that goes forward in the future, and my stallion was old, and I said we needed a stallion. So Swede joined in with me in a business partnership, and we bought a new stallion that we went to England and sought, found, bought, and imported back into this country. He supported that being a part of my life, a part of this community, a part of the nation as a whole, a part of the culture for the future, by giving the chance for the best animals to be created to go forward. The influence of Ike Sovereign will go on beyond both Swede and I's lifetime. Those babies of that horse will be here and be influencing the quality of horses that people have long beyond our own biological time. I'm proud to call him a friend and very fortunate to have him as my ally in life. He helps me do things that I couldn't do without him, and that's a blessing.
Well, this is Shanti, which is my meditation hall. In my meditation practice, it is very strongly stressed that we serve our community. It's a sanctuary, resting place for people to bring their troubles and their joys. I would like to be remembered as a good neighbor, as a good father, as somebody that cared about people, regardless of their situation. Just that we lived a full life and included other people in it.
Jason's horse logging and forestry methods are proven to be beneficial for the future of a healthy planet. But in order for his life's work to carry on, a younger generation has to fully grasp the value and urgency of his mission.
We had Jagger with us today, felling timber, my son Jagger. In this loafing area for my horses, there are trees that are getting damaged and beyond the point of healthy growth. So I've come up and found 3 here that I know we can get and not hurt the forest at all, and help us have a little money for the land payment. Taxes are due, and keep our life moving forward.
This tree is chosen because it has heavy damage, and a tree is a large stack of dead material surrounded by a thin living layer right underneath the bark, and that's what essentially is transferring the nutrients and the water up to the leaves to have the tree grow. So when you have all of the bark removed from a tree and the Cambria, that means that there is no way for this tree to be transporting the nutrients and water that it needs to the top of the tree to promote the growth of the tree. So at this point, this tree is in a state of slowly dying. It's an unhealthy tree, and it's time to harvest it.
For me, and for any small woodlot owner, this can be a natural capital system. This can be like a tree bank. It's something that I own, that I can manage in a certain way, that I can increase the interest that it collects in its own growth, while I still own the principle of the standing forest.
There are few things as satisfying to watch as a highly skilled craftsman becoming an artist. Bullseye.
That's the open face, hinge, and latch method. Safest method, best controlled method, the best way to take care of what we're leaving, because what we're leaving is more important than what we're taking.
This forest is producing good money for me all the time, so I want to leave it here, and I come and take the ones that I know that are not doing the best and create a multiple aged forest. As we understand and quantify or put a dollar and cents value on the services that are provided by the forest that the public is not paying for, eventually we will come to understand that as more valuable than the logs.
The environmental services that a forest provides the public for free. That means you and I for free. We don't pay a dime for these life-dependent gifts, regardless of whether we live in a sprawling metropolis or an isolated countryside. It's important to understand the scope of this, as it's the entire point of Jason's lifelong commitment. So what's the big deal? What are those services? A place to hike and camp? For starters, sure. We have to understand that scientists, engineers, corporations, and entrepreneurs will never create a product or method that comes even remotely close to providing the benefits of a healthy forest. There will never be a single machine that makes rain, filters water, creates oxygen, creates soil, cleans soil, captures and stores carbon, absorbs heat while providing shade, grows fruit and nuts, and provides housing for all God's creatures. A forest also provides protection from the elements, mitigates flooding, fights erosion, requires virtually no maintenance or repairs, and replaces itself over and over at no cost, forever, naturally. We must understand that the responsibility falls on each of us to protect our forest and all of our natural resources with our efforts and the dollars we spend. But protecting or sustaining what we currently have is not enough.
Since being sustainable implies staying the same and being able to go forward into infinity, it seems hard for me to understand that when it's also being measured by the current status of things that are in a decline. I don't understand how you can sustain a decline. If things are declining on an environmental sense of drought, extreme weather, water quality or whatever, we can't sustain a decline. So in order to have a chance to be sustainable and stay able to support human life, I submit humbly that it has to be restorative. And restorative is what the argument should be about. Not whether this is sustainable or that is sustainable. What will it take to restore our natural world to where it can care for our needs as a species? If we have any love for our own children or for the future or for things that are a part of the essence of living.
We all know, without having to be told, the value of having a healthy natural world, of having robust populations of all species, of having forested land, protected water systems, and protected clean air. These gifts should have never been debated in the first place. But change in a world dominated by those profiting from the destruction of the planet requires us all to be willing to revolt against the norm. And so Jason and those like him are indeed leading a real revolution. And it could be the most essential fight mankind has ever embarked on. And it's simply the fight to live in a healthy, natural environment free from chemicals and forever pollutants. Is that really asking too much? Dare we ever settle for anything less? But who will help make that change?
There's the old saying that imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So anybody that wants to do what you do makes your life worth doing, worth living. So the apprentice that comes into my life and wants to learn the skill set that I offer makes my life much more meaningful.
I want to do this as a profession after this. Berea College has a wonderful program with horse technician Ben Burgess, and I work in the forestry department at Berea, so when I go back there, I plan to be fully immersed in that.
My name is Idalia Flores Martinez. I'm a political science major. I go to Berea College. I grew up around horses, so I just wanted to learn about different kinds of horses and learn more about how to use them in the real world, like working. I want to learn more about the environment so that, let's say one day I do work with the government of like Kentucky or any other state, I have some sense of how to connect with people specifically that are focused on protecting the environment.
Jason doesn't teach from a lectern. His podium is the seat of a logging arch, his classroom, the forest floor. His life is about the work. Those who want to become biological woodsmen start by learning to use chainsaws and working with powerful horses that weigh 2,000 pounds. This life requires confidence and courage on day one.
That was an excellent felling job. All of his cuts were perfect. His abstract comprehension, his ability to see what his saw was doing inside the tree without being able to see it was excellent. Tree went exactly where he wanted to. Minimum impact, easy extraction, fell the brush away from us. That was exactly what he was supposed to do. He did a great job. An interesting aside here is that this tree is proving that we're taking the worst first because it was rotting from the inside out. So it'll still be a valuable log even though it's rotten in the center. But from a perspective of a forest manager, I wanted to cut the losses. The tree that's rotting faster than it's growing, take it now. You know, cut the losses.
I love the forest. I love the environment. I'm all for being sustainable and restorative, but to actually do that, I'm going to be using horses, and that's what really hits me right there, is that I am able to do something that's low carbon emission. I can use animals that are lovely to be around, and the work I'm going to be doing is the best work I can think of.
Well, today we have Carl Whitaker, my old best friend of 35 years. Has always comes through, kind of checks out and see what we're doing, and he's very encouraging to the young people. The young people admire him because of his experience in life, and that he's a combat veteran from Vietnam and a horseman of his own right, and it's always a pleasure to have an old friend come by. And then Carl's a badass because he's the kind of guy that has no pause between the need for action and action. He's present. He's totally present to everything that he's doing, and it makes him a wonderful companion and a partner, and especially if what you're doing involves physical labor and work, because Carl will step in and do his part with no urging. You know, he knows what needs to be done. He has the initiative and the drive to do it, and he's not afraid of anything. I mean, not afraid of dangerous situations, dangerous horses, or dangerous people. So that makes him a badass.
There's nothing like going out there and working in the woods with a pair of horses that you've trained. The power and the communication that you got between yourself and the horses, that's just a whole different ball game right there, dude. And you feel at one with nature. And you can also, like you say, the worst first, taking out the damaged timber to let the rest of the timber grow. If you got a lifetime and a little bit of acreage, then that's a good way of preserving the forest for the next generation.
Being a horseman means that I'm going to be able to do the things that Jason is doing now. And like he always says, Jason always telling me that his apprentices should always learn more and be better than him, as the next generation should be better than the older generations. Continue the knowledge, go forward with that. And that's what I want to do. I want to continue and keep the tradition of horse logging, biological woodsmanship going.
Following the pattern of the Forest of Dreams, I keep doing it and they find me. And she found me, and I even forget how she found me, but it was more of you. I didn't recruit you as much as you showed up.
Yeah, no, and I said, you got a recommendation of where I can learn what you're doing anywhere closer to me? And you said, I wish I did, but you come on down anytime you like.
My name is Kelly Walsh, and I am here at Ridgewind Farm to learn from Jason.
The point is neutral.
Yeah.
To get it to where if she's not fussing with the bit, there's no signal so she can wear it comfortably. But where if it's too loose, if it's way out there stretching you lose all of your leverage trying to get it to work. This is a 3-signal bit. You can put a lot of leverage, which pulls this onto the curb chain. No leverage, just pressure on the bar. And whenever you use leverage, it pulls down on the pole.
Yeah, I can show you that.
All right, I'm going to try it. Whoa.
Communication with the horses occurs through voice commands and the lines that run directly from the driver to the horse's mouth. The horses are infinitely sensitive to the most subtle movements of the lines. The communication should always be clear and gentle. Aggression, or the use of fear, is cruel, unnecessary, and counterproductive.
Come up. In my opinion, we're definitely at a critical moment that the work we do today will greatly affect tomorrow. I really believe that we're at a time, and I'm glad that I'm alive now and I'm witnessing some of these more like traditional ways of relating with the earth, more grounded ways of acknowledging our place in the ecosystem. That's what gives me hope.
I've had several good apprentices. I've trained over 200 people how to do this, and some of them have far exceeded my own capacity. When the student becomes better than the teacher, it's the greatest compliment to the teacher possible, but it's also a real compliment to the individuals who take an interest in this. They're all very capable. They have their own drive and their own sense of purpose.
It's been just one of the biggest blessings in my life so far is to meet him just as a friend and a mentor, let alone the work that he does and is teaching me and others. It's really a deep privilege to know him.
These young people that think that what I'm doing is worth them doing it it's the most gratifying thing in my whole life. Working with animals in the forest and being restorative in your intention and in your design and in your purpose will become the way of the future. And that's why I'm inspired by all these young people that see that and want to do that and feel good about giving their lives to that approach to living. I'm happy about that. There's a boundary of timber down in Blue Ridge land. Big old trees are standing, waiting on the harvest and the man with a plan. Big red horses headed for the landing. Chains are rattling, leather squeaking, early morning rising, somebody speaking. Come up, come up. Draw, big red horse, draw. Pull that white oak log. Tonight you can lay around like a lazy dog. Because you know your work ain't done if you can hear that chainsaw run. So draw, big red horse, until the evening comes. Draw, big red horse, until the evening comes. You're just a fat dog. You think fat dog's your name, don't you? I call you that so much. You do.